Hey everyone, welcome to Outpost Gray. If you're new here, I'm your host, Jack Scott. And what I do is I provide you information in cybersecurity, innovation, and technology. And today we are going to be talking about a hot topic, AI, generative AI, all the things AI. And to be really honest with you, I only have a general idea of what we're going to be talking about. It's a rough general questions, but I made sure that today I brought an expert on this show who can really talk about AI, what is happening in this space, the future of AI. And if you've been paying attention, there's a new law that should be coming out very soon. It's called the EU AI Act. So we're going to be diving into that as well. So welcome to the show. If you are new here, it would mean the world to me if you hit that subscribe button and you became part of the Outpost Gray community. For everybody else that continues to come back and is already a part of this community, you guys are the best. I love you. All right, so let's talk about this guest and who we're going to be bringing on the show. Many of you already know this individual because we have overlap within the two communities of Outpost Gray and Simply Cyber. So you all are in for a real treat today, and I am honored to be hosting the very own James McQuiggan. That's right. James is on the show today on Outpost Gray, and he has a little bit of a unique background. He has a bachelor's degree at the University of Phoenix in science information. He is also held various roles in IT and information security, as well as security education and outreach. So today what he does, speaking of the outreach piece, he does security awareness advocacy for a company, very well-known company called KnowBe4, where he is actually responsible for amplifying KnowBe4's message. And what that means is this guy is so lucky. He literally gets to travel around the world and talk about KnowBe4 and talk about security awareness through the new school security awareness training. How awesome is that? Seriously. That's actually how James and I met. We met at a conference while he was there, and he was actually doing a talk on AI, but more to follow on that. On top of all of that, he is committed to the field of cybersecurity, and you can see it through his various certifications. He has the coveted CISSP, as well as the SACP. If you're not familiar with that, that is the Security Awareness and Culture Professional. He also, on top of that, teaches at the Cyber Ops Associate course at Valencia College. He serves also as the Education Director at Florida Cyber Alliance and is the chapter president of the IC Squared Central Florida chapter. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring our guest on the show. James, welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to have you. Yes.
Oh, Jax, I am so excited to be here. Thank you very much for having me on the show. We're going to have so much fun chatting AI and, all that other good stuff.
I know. I am thrilled. We met at the Wild West Hacking Fest. Talk a little bit about what you were doing at the Wild West Hacking Fest. You were teaching an AI course, and I met you through Simply Cyber, through Dr. Gerald Auger. And you guys are like Biffles, best friends.
Yeah, it's interesting. I met Jerry, Dr. Gerald Auger, Jerry. I met him at Black Hat in 2022, and we became fast friends. It was one of those things over the weekend, hanging out Black Hat, DEF CON. We just kind of hung out, and we played chess, and we were chatting, and we had a lot of common interests. And it was so funny because I remember at one point he turned to me and goes, "Look, I'm really sorry if I'm like monopolizing your time here for over the weekend." I'm like, "Dude, this is great. Getting to hang out with someone, getting to network, and somebody that the way that Jerry is and what he does with the Simply Cyber community, I personally just kind of latched onto it, and it's a fantastic community, and what he's doing, the work that he's doing is absolutely amazing. And kudos to you and your partner with your two cyber chicks. So excited that you guys have come under the Simply Cyber umbrella. Going to be doing that podcast with Jerry, and looking forward to seeing what comes out of that. So, but yeah, we met at Wild West Hacking Fest last October, and again, you were just kind of someone I gravitated to, going, this person, I need to be their friend because what they're doing is amazing. The work that you've been doing and everything else, and so again, real excited. But yeah, I was there talking about AI, the dark side of AI, looking at how cyber criminals are using artificial intelligence for their purposes, because we've been looking at it as like, hey, this is great. I can get it to write term papers. I can get it to write scripts. I can get it to give me recipes, all this generative AI for our purposes. But what are the cyber criminals using it for? And what are they using AI for? So that was a lot of fun putting that presentation together. And then, of course, Jerry and I did a talk on, kind of, great, you're in the industry. Now, what do you do? Depending at the different stages of where you are in your career, what should you be doing? What can you do to help progress rather than just doing training, but what else can you do to progress your career through, either networking or other training classes or even teaching? And I've already been teaching at Valencia now for a little over 4 years, and it's a lot of fun.
It's awesome. Yeah, you've got a lot going on. And you brought up something I want to cover, that you were talking about what you taught when you were at the Wild West Hacking Fest on generative AI and how adversaries are leveraging generative AI. And for anybody, it's like, what is generative AI? Super simplifying this for them. Explain to them, what is generative AI?
So generative AI is utilizing artificial intelligence, large language models, and neural networks, essentially. And what the large language model does is allows you to be able to communicate in your native tongue, in English, asking a request for something. And it is able to deliver that response back to you in a language that you easily understand. The easy way that I like to explain it is based off of this Chinese room theory, which is based on, you have somebody that's inside of a room that doesn't speak Chinese. They only speak English. But in that room, they have boxes upon boxes of information of all symbols and what symbols go together logically and to provide responses. And what's happening is you have people outside of this room that are slipping in pieces of paper with questions in Chinese. And at the end of the day, the person is going through and looking at all the different symbols and putting together the response based on what symbols go with what symbols, and then delivers the response. And what happens is you have the people outside the room thinking that someone inside the room speaks Chinese, and yet the person doesn't. And that's kind of how AI and computer programs are, and generative AI is the fact that the computer, the AI, the algorithms, it knows what words go with what, essentially, what symbols go with what, but it doesn't comprehend. It doesn't understand. Now, that's kind of when we get into the general AI, and that's something totally different, years down the road. But generative AI is what's allowing us to be able to put in a prompt to have an image generated for us, put in, text and get a response back as well. So one of my favorite things, and I know we'll probably touch upon it a bit, is in education. And I'll take an article and I'll have ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude or whatever generative AI tools are out there, and I'll have it go through the article and generate questions for me and generate a quiz, and then use that for the students so they'll read an article and then I've already generated the questions. I don't have to go through and create all that. So, when it comes right down to it, bottom line, when it comes to generative AI, it's a tool. It is a task-driven tool to do a task. It's not going to replace people's jobs. It might replace tasks, but generative AI is there to help us with those tasks. It's a tool. And essentially, it's what's going to make our lives easier. I'm flashing back to the 90s, where I remember my dad would go to the library when he had to research something, because that's where he went to learn. You went to the library and got out books and read them and assessed the information. Then late 90s, right? 2000s, the internet, mid 90s, we have the internet coming along. And lo and behold, now we don't need to go to the library. We can just go on Google and research and read the information there. And we're able to, again, the internet was a tool, and now it's become such a way of life. Everything is integrated. What we're doing here is all online, all on the internet. And I think AI is going to be that way as well. We are certainly it's going to be integrated in our lives. It already is, whether folks realize it through your personal assistants from Amazon or from Apple or Google. Those are all AI driven behind the scenes, using machine learning and again, utilizing those large language models to provide responses and information for you.
Yeah, say large language model 5 times really fast, LLM.
Yeah.
We shorten it now, folks. It's LLM going forward. So,
LLMs. Yep.
yeah. So we've got generative AI, and we know that from history, whenever there's a piece of technology that comes out and it's used for good, it can also be used for bad. Adversaries have a way of, oh, wait, great tool, generative AI. Now let's like use it as a weapon. So you work with KnowBe4. I'm curious, there is a human element to this when it comes to AI. And some individuals and some research is showing that there's a rise in social engineering attacks because of, like you said, you can put a prompt in there and the next thing you know, you're generating thesis and books. Well, it's very similar with social engineering. So how have you and your firm KnowBe4 been able to really approach the generative AI and the rise of social engineering attacks and help with teaching people how to mitigate or prepare for them?
Essentially, the way I look at it and the way we look at it is the cyber criminals have leveled up their game. For years, it's always been cat and mouse. They do something, we figure out a way to stop it. Then they figure a way around it. And it's been that evolution, bank robbers and, the marshals, right? We've evolved over the years. And now with cyber criminals being able to leverage generative AI, it used to be years ago, watch out for bad grammar, watch out for misspelled words. Most likely it could be a phishing attempt. Now that all goes away. Cyber criminals can leverage generative AI, whether they're using ChatGPT or some other one, one of the malicious ones that are out there that have been created, and leveraging those to create those well-written, no spelling mistakes, good grammar, emails so that they send them out. So now that kind of removes that element of a phishing email out. So for us at KnowBe4, the game hasn't changed. It's still a matter of social engineering. It's still a matter of being able to go through, look at the email, assess it, ask yourself the questions, have that sense of mindfulness with regards to, okay, I'm not going to try and do multitasking when it comes to my emails. If it's something I'm not expecting, an email I'm not expecting, if it's somebody I don't know, if there's some requirement where I have to do something quickly or an urgency or an authoritative type request, I'm going to take the necessary time, check the email, check who it's from, check if there's an attachment, have a look at the link, verify that link if I can without actually visiting it. If it's somebody that I know, I may reach out to them through another method, through texting, through a phone call, I may, Slack or whatever else that might be available, and verify, hey, did you mean to send me this email about my performance review, even though you're not my boss, kind of a thing? And so it's a matter of taking that time, slowing down a little bit. And we've always talked about, the ever, stop, think, and click, but it does require that ability to be able to slow down, be more mindful of those emails that are coming in. Because we've done studies when we look at why people click on links, because that's the important part is like, we're all educated people. We're smart. We've been to college or we've been to school, but we get an email and we still fall for it. Your level of intelligence doesn't relate to whether you're going to fall for a phishing attack or not. It's going to come down to, are you aware of the different attacks? Are you taking the time not to rush through email? And because in our studies, we've seen that a majority of the time when people fall for a phishing attack, it's because they weren't in the moment. They were rushing. They were multitasking. They were doing something else and saw the email and went, what the heck, and clicked on it. So it's important that, as always, you take the time with your email, because the way I look at it with email is that's your proverbial key to the front door for your organization if you're dealing with organizations. Because cyber criminals love to attack and go after the people, because it's a lot easier to attack the human than it is to attack the technology. And so going after the human, they want to be able to target them and, rely on those emotions for someone to click on a link, allow them to come in through that front door, and you don't even get to see. And then lo and behold, off they go. So yes, the cyber criminals are having it a little easier now because of the fact that they can use generative AI to generate those socially engineered emails that are going to leverage a response from you, whether greed, curiosity, urgency, whatever it may be, to get you to click on that link. That's their whole goal, is to do that. And so if you take the moments necessary, yes, I know people get hundreds of emails in their inbox every day, but it's a habit that we have to form. and going through and having that mindfulness of going, okay, I'm not going to rush through the email. If, okay, I'm expecting this one. Okay, good. Yeah. Oh, this I haven't seen before. I haven't seen this request. Let me just check who it's from, check any links if there's anything in there. But it's just a matter of being able to slow down a little bit when it comes to the email and just have that more, awareness when it comes to it.
Yeah. And reminding, you touched on it too, like these attacks are seasonal. Like we're going to see attacks on the rise around the elections coming up. There were attacks during specifically related to like the COVID funding, the money that you got when COVID happened, if you were in the United States. And adversaries are getting smarter and smarter. They're using social engineering. They're getting more familiar with like, if it's a targeted attack, like what is James like? Does he like to play golf? And he goes to this particular golf course, and they're going to send you an opportunity to play golf for free or whatever that is. And it's always emotional. It's usually like there's an emotional trigger, either an excitement of something as like a half price or free, or if you don't pay this, your account's going to be closed. So like you said, take the moment, sit back, take a knee, what we say in the military, take a knee, drink some water. And if it feels fishy, it probably is. Like that's what I always forward anything I think is suspect to my phishing department at my work. I'm like, whatever, even if I don't. And most of the time, James, I'm right. Like over 80% of the time, there's only been a couple of times that I've been wrong on my assumptions. So that's a pretty high number. Yeah.
Better safe than sorry. And it's interesting because today being Valentine's Day,
I know. Look at us. Woo!
In our reds and pinks. Yep. Yeah, there's the heart. It's a lousy heart. But anyway, one of the things that we deal with is romance scams. I mean, they are really, really prevalent. And you talk about tugging on the heartstrings, going after the emotions. Those romance scams, when you've got people that, don't have anybody and want that companionship, the cyber criminals love to go after that and leverage that to try and get them to give up money and information and data. And, we're constantly seeing all those different romance scams. And that's, a really big social engineering issue as well. And of course, today being Valentine's Day, that kind of brings that to light. And that's always something that comes up a lot when this time of the year, again, as you were saying, the seasonal. We got tax season coming up. Taxes are always a big thing. We've got the fear of not paying your taxes or the fact that you're late or something of that matter. And they'll leverage that as well to get people to click on links and fall victim to those kind of attacks as well.
Outside of having these growing concerns of the rise of social engineering, another hot topic that we're seeing in AI is bias and fairness. We've seen various different use cases that have already reflected biases within the data sets. And you've held multiple roles within cybersecurity education. That's one of the sensitive areas that many believe that there could be bias, or there could be areas that maybe it's not fair. How do you see the use of AI in these spaces benefiting or harming the education sector in general? And that could be, a school submission and approval to go to like a university, or it could be harming maybe a paper that you're turning in, and now we're using AI to read and filter through that paper, for example.
Yeah, when generative AI came onto the scene, last year, and it was huge. You had schools that were whole school districts that were blocking access to ChatGPT. But the problem is there's so many variations of generative AI that's out there. It's hard to stop them all. You essentially, and then you also had one of the more interesting stories is you had a college professor that they had the students write these end of the term papers, and they were worth a major part of the grade. And the professor got the papers. They were sent electronically, copied and pasted into ChatGPT and asked, did you help write this paper? And ChatGPT responded, because of hallucination, went, yeah, I helped write this paper. And at which point the professor failed the students. Nope, you used ChatGPT. You're not supposed to. It said you used it, and now I'm failing you, which is kind of like a big, face palm right there. It's like you realize what you're asking. You're believing the computer over the students. You're asking the computer to comprehend something over your students. The students had to go to the dean of the university with versions of their paper to prove that we did not have ChatGPT write it. We,
Mhm.
But again, it goes back to what I said earlier. ChatGPT, generative AI, is a tool. And I know people have come out and said, oh, we've got ways to be able to detect it and everything else. But and as a college professor, that's what I deal with as well. Now, I don't have a lot of my students doing essays. A lot of the stuff we have is very hands-on. There are some, in assignments where they have to go and do research and that kind of thing. But it's a matter of being able to understand your students. Now, granted, a professor may have 300 students, but it's a matter of knowing your students and their writing style a little bit. If you can go through and get them to write about who they are, which is one of the things I do, is if you get your students to write about who they are, you now get a good sample of how they write. And then when they start turning in other things that it's like, yeah, this looks too good or too proper. Yeah, I'm knowing that you've probably leveraged something. And as it is a tool, I have no problem. And I'll actually, on some of the assignments, I'll go out to ChatGPT and I'll ask it, explain to me the OSI model, in 2 paragraphs, boom, and there it is. And I'm like, see here, it's a great tool to use, but this, whether we consider that copyrighted or plagiarism, you're just going to copy and you're not submitting it as your own work. Because the whole thing with plagiarism all deals around with you're taking somebody else's work and submitting it as on your own. That's the problem. But if you take something from ChatGPT, cite it, or if you copy something and then you rework it or use it as a basis to write in your own words, well, then that doesn't count as plagiarism. And so a lot of the time, I'm showing my students, here's how you can leverage it as a tool to help you learn, help you study, help you whatever. Because you can even have ChatGPT give you quiz questions and help you study that way. So it's a tool that can be used when it comes to term writing papers. That's always been the easy one. Maybe we now need to evolve as professors, come up with other ways, have a student turn in a paper, make it a term paper, but they're working on it throughout the whole year. And so they turn in draft and then you review it and then they submit it and you can check and everything else. But there are different ways that you can leverage that. But when we deal with biases, when we're dealing with biases in generative AI, we go back to the issue of what it's been trained on. I've always remembered garbage in, garbage out, when it comes to any type of data processing. And, years and years ago, I used to work on databases and processing data. And that was always fun. But yeah, if you have garbage data going in, you're going to get garbage data coming out, and you get those biases. If the LLM hasn't been trained properly, the generative AI models haven't been trained properly, or with enough information, you are going to run into those biases. It can only process the information that it's been given. It can't go out, and create new data. Well, it does create new data. Those are the hallucinations, but it's not able to, retrain itself on new data, essentially, unless you're giving it to it. So
yeah, those are solid points. And I like the point on the bias. So data in, data out. And some of the areas that we're seeing with organizations, like you said, a lot of them are just blocking the AI because of fear. They don't understand it. They want to just prevent a bias, for example, but that's not the solution here. And so one of the things that we see within the tech industry, especially with an emerging technology, is technology comes out, it disrupts.
Yep.
And then the next thing you know, we see policies, we see legislation, we see law that follows it to help with privacy, civil liberties. And we're starting to slowly see that this AI space is still very much the Wild West, but countries and states are starting to get on board with certain legislation, certain laws. And one of the big ones, as you're aware of, is the EU AI Act. And Europe seems to be always a couple of steps ahead of us, like the GDPR, for example, data privacy. They did an outstanding job on that. And the next thing you saw was like a ripple effect of other countries, and California almost did a similar law that was almost a replica of GDPR. And then we saw other states following suit. And now we've got the EU AI Act, and it's looking to be passed by June 2024. There is a draft out there. If anybody's interested, I can drop it in the show notes for you to be able to look at it, take a look. But I want to get your thoughts, because there's a lot of individuals that there's, like anything, there's a lot of critics out there, and some people are saying that it's too stringent and it can have negative impacts on innovation and potentially limit its benefits. And a lot of people are just concerned that the abuse of AI and it could potentially cause harm to individuals because of the biases. So what is your stance with this EU AI law, and how do you see it influencing other nations at looking at regulation of AI?
Yeah, it's always a challenge when we're dealing with regulation and government policies that are being created, the laws that are getting created. They're working to try and protect the people with regards to this. And when we had generative AI, when ChatGPT came out, you had Italy coming forward and going, nope, they blocked it in the country because of the GDPR issues that they had there. So now they're coming out with regards to AI overall. And, they've got it. There's an ISO standard. NIST has got their risk management, and that's what we're dealing with. And that's what we want to be dealing with, is that risk management of AI systems overall. Making sure that, we've got the proper bias mitigation in there. We've got the proper regulations for dealing with transparency and auditing, and looking at keeping that pilot in regards to AI overall. Because one of the scariest things right now is when we look at AI as the whole neural networks. That is not something we have a lot of insight into, on how that computer is processing and dealing with a lot of that information. And so we need to have more insights inside of that. When we're looking at what the regulations are doing, or we want the regulations to do, we want it to be able to protect the people. We want it to be able to protect our data and everything else. And that was kind of why GDPR was the way it was. We're working here in the US. I know we've got, like I said, we have the NIST risk management framework already with AI. We've got the top folks that are, from OpenAI, from Anthropic, from the various other, Microsofts and Google, coming together, working with the current administration to try and also develop regulation. But we want it to make sure that it's going to provide the necessary insights. It's going to provide that transparency. Want to be able to go through and have the audits that go on, verify, do that essentially, pen testing against it to make sure that, you can't data poison it. You can't, you'll have prompt injection always, but you can't upload poison, data poisoning the well, so to speak. And so that regulation is needed so that we can move forward. And, for me, when it comes to, one of my favorite analogies when it comes to this is, when you look at airplanes and air travel, planes have been able to take off, fly, and land on their own for a while through autopilot. But we still have two pilots at the front of the airplane. We need the one pilot to fly the plane just in case something goes wrong. And pilots love to fly, so they have that. But you still have a second pilot in case anything happens to the first pilot. There's that redundancy. You always need the pilot. And with regards to our AI systems, generative AI and everything else, there's always going to need to be some type of human element. Yes, AI is going to take care of a lot of those tasks, but you still need that human element in there, being able to go through and having those audits, having that transparency, and essentially, have that pilot that's there for us to be able to, ensure that the data is sound, it's not tampered with, it's accurate, and so forth. And so essentially having those essential fundamental rights when it comes to AI, being able to use it as a tool and not have it being used as a weapon, as being used as a weapon for misinformation or disinformation, especially with what we've got going on in the US with regards to our elections. We've already seen it been used to affect other elections already. Slovakia had happened last year. And we've already been happening it this year. You had the deep fake audio phone call of President Joe Biden that was sent out to New Hampshire voters to get them not to vote, which I thought was interesting in itself. But, it sounded, if you're on the phone, it's never like crystal clear and like you're talking to somebody. And so there is going to be a little distortion or a little muffling. And so, yeah, it may not sound 100% like the president, but it sounds close. And if and people have a tendency to believe when, things on the phone or things online and what they see in videos. And so that's, we're going to need that regulation to be able to prevent that, especially having regulation with regards to the elections. You know, if you're going to use AI, you need to identify it. If people are going to be interacting with AI, they should be notified. You know, those are the kind of things we need to have awareness around.
Yeah, and they talk about, like, that talks about, what I'm thinking is that transparent statement that you provide with the use of an AI, knowing what harm could possibly come from that use of AI. And you even touched on, like, the neural networks, and we hear this conundrum of, like, the black box or the gray box or the white box. And the white box is where you can see all the inner workings of that neural network and everything that's in there. So you know when the data goes in, where the data is coming from, what happens to the data, so the black box or the white box or gray, and then how it gets the output. But if you have a black box, it's like, we don't know what is happening in the neural network. And that's how a lot of these models are developed. And so the problem and the conundrum we're having is, like, going back to that transparency of, like, although, you know, a lot of people are saying we need to be more transparent, we need to have transparent AI. But then you run into what is known as the transparency paradox. And that happened, and I'll actually share my screen on this, but there was a transparency paradox that happened in 2019 with a software. I don't know if it was a company, but it was software called Lime. And what had happened is they were like open, and they were willing to be like, hey, we're going to share our AI details. And it was this 2016 paper. We'll open it right here, actually. And this got into, it was their abstract of what the Lime software could do. And it went into enough details, transparency, okay, James? But the adversaries were able to leverage this and can manipulate this now just because of the information, by being fully transparent and even providing the algorithm for sparse linear explanations. Like, everything was in here. So what is too much for transparency? How do we find literally the gray area in having transparency in our AI, but not giving too much that then now the AI can be leveraged against us by the adversaries? It's a tough
Yeah,
spot.
I mean, that's kind of what open source is, right? You know, we've had open source software that's been out there, and, you know, cyber criminals can leverage that. Anything that gets put out there, you know, it becomes fair game. You know, they can leverage it. You know, it's not like we can turn around and go, you know, okay, we're not going to have AI out there. No, we know AI is going to be staying around for a long time. But yeah, when you have that transparency, when you're sharing that much information, sure, anybody can be able to use it and manipulate it. That's the paradox aspect of it. You know, it was interesting when you were talking about the neural networks and that you know, having the gray and the black and the white box, and, you know, the clear capability. There was an interview with Jeffrey Hinton, and Jeffrey Hinton is kind of like the godfather of AI. He worked at Google, helped revolutionize their whole AI program. And there was an interview with him on 60 Minutes several months ago. Fascinating interview. You can probably find it on YouTube. And one of the things that he talked about was, and someone at the interview, they asked him, you know, what scares you about AI? And there were two parts to it throughout that we got from him throughout the segment. And the first one was the whole issue of neural networks and not being able to have that insight in there. The second thing was how the military might use AI robots in their you know, warfare or whatever, and then if you gave them weapons. So yeah, it's kind of you know, and of course immediately everyone thinks Terminator, you know, because of the movies and the Hollywood and everything else. But, you know, again, you get into that, you know, what kind of openness are we going to have with regards to that, you know, with who's using AI and for what purpose. So while, yeah, the transparency paradox, giving too much, and now anybody and everyone can use it, like open software, that does become a concern. So, you know, they can leverage it, manipulate it, and do what they need to on AI. But whether it's an open source one, like the one we see that you shared with us, or it's one that they develop and they create, AI is just going to be one of those tools that everybody uses for good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting and see how things roll out in the next. I would even say just the next 3 to 5 years, because I think we're in everything's changing right now. And because of AI and how quickly technology is moving now at such a faster rate, I think we're going to see so much shift, even in the political landscape, as far as like legislation from the US side, because I think after the AI Act comes out, there's going to be a flood. We've got 2 executive orders, but I think we're going to see
Right.
more states getting on board. We're already seeing different legislations in various different states. I know New York did a law 144 for related to HR, their HR system. So
Right.
we're going to start seeing more of these, but
Mhm.
you know, as Americans, like we love to fragment all of our stuff, just like we've done with our data privacy. So I think the
Right.
same thing's going to happen, but I'd love to see a national law for AI. We'll see if that happens. We're still trying to figure out a national law for data
I mean,
privacy.
we've known for years it takes Washington a little while to catch up when it
Yeah.
comes to technology, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, can we move faster on one? I mean, it sounds like they're getting the right players in there. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
getting the right laws written. So,
Yep.
the way technology is moving is light speed.
Mhm.
You know, a year ago, yeah, I had just done my first presentation on AI and kind of the history of it, and kind of leading into you know, generative AI and regular AI concepts. And now here we are a year later, and it's everywhere. And you see every technology. You go to a security conference or a tech conference, and it's AI everywhere. You know, it's kind of like you're not anybody if you don't have AI in your system, in your products or anything. But yeah, no, it's certainly the amount of change that's happened the last year has just been explosive. I can only imagine what the next, like you said, the next 3 to 5 years. You know, I'd be really curious to see where we are a year from now. They're talking, you know, 2045 was a speculation where we were going to have general AI, where it was going to be have a lot more comprehension, almost not to the extent of sentience, but certainly comprehension. And they were forecasting 2045 for general AI. They're now pulled that back to be 2030, the end of the decade. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what comes out of the organizations like Anthropic and Google and
Mhm.
Microsoft and OpenAI.
Mm. It's exciting. I'm excited. It's exciting times right now.
There's excitement. There's a little trepidation as well. It's like, yeah, you know, it's kind of like, this is cool. Can we keep this for a while? You know, but you know, you think
Yeah.
about when we got online and the internet, you know, back in the early 90s, you know, that was really exciting. It's like, oh, this is great. And, you know, but we never got social media really till after 2000. We were dealing with the internet 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Here we are dealing with AI. I would say this is AI 2.0 because of the generative aspects, but
Yeah.
I can see 3.0 coming very quickly as well. Kind of like the industrial revolutions we've dealt with over the years.
Absolutely. It's a very good point. So if somebody's listening to this, James, and they're like, man, I'm really wanting to develop, one of their tasks is like developing AI standards within their firm. And those standards, and that could be many things. So I'll hyper focus this question into oversight for AI risk. So they are tasked out with, okay, we've got some AI tools that we would like to use in our organization. It could be ChatGPT, for example. It could be Grammarly. It could be a Microsoft tool that has AI within it. What if they're listening to this and they're like, where do they start? Like, where do I start? What would you tell somebody to do of like, this is the first thing that you need to do before you do anything else within your environment?
Ooh, that's
It's a tough
yeah.
one.
When you start, that's a deep one. When you start looking at, yeah, what's the first thing you do? Because we're already neck deep in AI already. When you think about it, you've got organizations that have been struggling with it for the last year. You've had ones that have said they cut it off at the
Yep.
firewall. No generative AI access is allowed because they're worried about data loss. They're worried
Yep.
about people uploading. And we saw those stories last year. Samsung, various lawyers, executives, and everything else just uploading because it's a great tool. So the first thing to do is look at your business and look at where can AI help your business. Where, you know, is it going to be used in marketing for the generative AI to come up with the marketing plans? Is it going to be used as, you know, within your own product or service? Is it something where, you know, you've got different departments that want to use it for whatever reasons? Understanding what your business is and what needs AI can help you fulfill. Because as I said at the beginning, AI as a tool helps you do tasks. It's not going to replace somebody in your organization. It might replace some of the jobs people are doing, but then you could free them up from having to do whatever work they're doing. Now they can focus on other things, other creative things. You want to look at what's your return of investment. Okay, you're going to spend time and effort utilizing the enterprise version of ChatGPT. What kind of return on productivity is that going to give you? Because when it comes to wanting to have AI in your organization, you have to go talk to your executives. You have to go talk to the board, and you're going to be implementing and bringing these things in. So figuring out what capabilities it can do for your organization, what kind of ROI that's going to do, how you're going to have that conversation, what kind of policies you have to set in place. And then the question is, okay, great. Now where do I get policies? Mm-hmm. What's really funny is I had that question put to me and I said, why don't you ask ChatGPT? Because, have a look to see what it can generate. Use that as a tool to write your policy and then modify it, tweak it, adjust it as you need it. But utilizing AI for your needs as a tool is going to go a long way. So yeah, you definitely, there's a lot of people that want to have it. There's a lot of people that don't. So it's just a matter of figuring out where it's going to fit within your organization and going from there.
Yeah, I like what you said about purpose, though. Business purpose. I think that is the first step. You're 100% right. Let's understand what AI we actually need to help us with our business, and what is our risk appetite in using that within our environment, and then what policies and procedures can we put in place to protect ourselves and be prepared for.
It's interesting. Sorry, I was going to say. It's interesting when everyone started getting on the internet, right? Back in the 90s, and you had organizations using it. We came out with the proxy servers. We came out with that proxy environment so organizations could filter all the internet traffic to come in, filter it and go, oh yeah, no, that you're going to a sports site. We don't allow that. Or an adult site. Yeah, we don't allow that. And it gets dropped. But then it also tracks what web pages are being visited, and they can, do that. We almost need that for AI, a proxy AI that sits in your network that, filters in all of that information, that can look at, okay, what are you asking? What are you uploading? You're uploading a file that you want an executive summary on. Oh, it can go through and go, oh no, there's critical information in here or confidential information about our organization. This doesn't go. And you get alerted on it, almost creating your own AI portal essentially. Mm-hmm. And then you could have that proxy to other, generative AI systems that are out there. So having that's kind of almost, that next step that we need within organizations so they can safely use AI, generative AI within the organization for the users and still be able to protect your data overall.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to, goes back to security is important, but you don't want to stifle innovation by being too secure. So James, we are at time, but before we wrap up, I'd love for you to share your final thoughts in the best way anybody listening to this could be able to reach out to you.
Oh, to get a hold of me, I'm on LinkedIn. Definitely, you can find me on LinkedIn. I am on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. But I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me in the Simply Cyber community. If you don't know what that is, go check out YouTube, type in Simply Cyber, check out the daily cyber threat brief with Dr. Jerry Ozier, which reminds me, I'm going to have to send him a bill now for that. No. Definitely check out the Simply Cyber daily cyber threat brief with Jerry. That's always a great way to start your day. But you can find me on LinkedIn. You can do a search, got my name here. But yeah, let me know you found me on Outpost Gray. I get lots of requests all the time. So if you've watched this and you want to connect with me, just tell me you watched me here, and I'd love to connect with you and chat with everybody.
I love that. Heck yeah. You guys saw him here on Outpost Gray. Awesome, James. You are the best. Thank you for being a guest on the show.
Right back at you. Thanks, Jax.